There is a moment when danger feels unreal, not because it is small but because it arrives quietly, a sound in the distance, a strange stillness in the air, a sense that something is wrong but not yet urgent. Many of us have experienced this in small ways: a sudden illness, a power outage, a storm that changes direction. In those moments we often wait, we look for a signal, we expect someone else to tell us what to do, and when no signal comes we feel exposed. That feeling of being alone without guidance is deeply unsettling. It reveals something we rarely like to admit: we depend on systems we do not see, and when they fail we are not prepared. The context here is not only about fire or disaster, it is about information, it is about how we learn what is happening around us and how quickly that knowledge reaches us. We like to believe that in moments of danger there is always a clear voice, a clear alert, a clear plan, but the truth is messy. Systems are slow, they are careful, they are designed to avoid mistakes, and in that carefulness time is often lost in everyday life. We see this too. Think about waiting for official approval at work while a problem grows, or waiting for a clear rule before helping someone who is struggling. Silence and delay often feel safer than acting without permission. On the surface this story seems to be about preparation and bravery, about learning new skills and building tools, but underneath it is really about noticing gaps. The first insight is simple but uncomfortable. The world is full of moments where help exists but does not reach the people who need it in time. This is not always because people do not care, it is often because systems are not built for speed or clarity, they are built for control. In daily life this shows up when we receive news after it is already old, when we hear about a problem only after it affects us, when we realize that the people closest to the situation knew long before any official message arrived. Information moves fastest among those who are already involved, those on the ground, those listening closely, those paying attention, but that information often stays trapped in small circles. The second insight hides behind a common assumption. We assume that official systems know best, we assume they have the full picture, we assume they are the only ones allowed to act. This assumption trains us to wait, it trains us to doubt our own observations, it tells us that acting without permission is dangerous or wrong, but in reality many systems are limited by rules, fear, and hierarchy. They move slowly not because they want to but because they are designed that way. This does not make them evil, it makes them incomplete. When situations change faster than systems can respond, gaps appear, and in those gaps, people suffer. We see this pattern everywhere: in schools where students see bullying before teachers do, in hospitals where nurses notice problems before reports are filed, in communities where locals understand risks long before policies are updated. The people closest to the issue often know first, but they are not always empowered to speak loudly. The third insight is about structure. When people who care deeply step into these gaps, they often face resistance, not because their work is harmful but because it challenges existing roles. Systems protect their boundaries, they protect their authority. When someone outside the system offers a solution, it can feel like an attack, even if the solution works, even if it saves time, even if it saves lives. This resistance can be confusing and painful, especially for those acting out of care in daily life. This might look like being told to stay in your lane, or being warned not to disrupt the process, or being criticized for moving too fast. The message is subtle but clear: do not change things without approval. But here is where the perspective begins to shift. What if responsibility does not always come with permission? What if care sometimes requires action before consensus? What if the role of citizens is not only to comply but to notice, to connect, and to build? This reframing is not about rejecting systems entirely, it is about understanding their limits and acting with intention when those limits are reached. It is about seeing yourself not as a passive receiver of help, but as a potential link in a larger chain. This does not mean everyone must build technology or respond to disasters. It means paying attention to where needs are not being met and asking who is already quietly filling those gaps. Often it is volunteers, neighbors, and enthusiasts, people who spend hours listening, learning, and sharing because they care. They do not wait for praise, they do not wait for funding, they act because delay feels worse than risk. In daily life, applying this perspective can be simple. It can mean sharing reliable information instead of rumors, it can mean checking on neighbors during extreme weather, it can mean learning basic skills that make you less dependent in emergencies. It can also mean supporting those who are already doing this work by trusting them, amplifying them, and protecting them when they face pushback. There is also an emotional layer here. Acting without permission requires courage, it requires accepting uncertainty, it requires being misunderstood. For many people this is harder than physical danger. We fear social consequences more than risk. We fear being told we overstepped, we fear being wrong. But waiting also has consequences, and those consequences are often invisible until it is too late. This is why preparation is not only about tools, it is about mindset. It is about deciding in advance that you will not freeze when systems fail, that you will look for helpers, and if needed become one. This idea can deepen further when people act together outside formal structures. They often build trust faster than institutions can. They share information in real time, they adapt quickly, they learn from mistakes without layers of approval. This kind of collective action is fragile but powerful. It depends on relationships and shared purpose, not authority. It reminds us that society is not only maintained by laws and offices but by people paying attention to each other. Over time these efforts can grow, they can become visible, they can even be adopted by the very systems that once resisted them. Change often follows this path, first ignored, then opposed, then accepted. This pattern is not new, we see it in science, in culture, and in civil action. The key is persistence and clarity of purpose, acting not for recognition but for impact, not to replace systems but to strengthen what they cannot reach. In the end, this story is not about fire or technology, it is about the moment you realize that waiting is a choice and acting is also a choice. It asks us to consider where in our own lives we rely too heavily on permission, and where we might responsibly step forward. It asks us to notice who is already doing the quiet work of care, and how we respond when they do. It invites us to reflect on the balance between caution and courage. So when the next moment of silence arrives and no clear signal comes, will you wait for permission or will you decide how to act?